This episode of the Fairway to Retail Success is brought to you by AGM vendor partner T-Commerce, the online retail solution for golf facilities. Give your members 24/7 shopping with no inventory risk. Visit tcommerce.shop to learn more. Now, back to today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fairway to Retail Success, an AGM podcast. I'm your host, Justine, the AGM's Director of Membership and Education. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Blatnik, Vice President of Peter Millar Licensing at Imperial. Before stepping into his current brand side role, Andrew spent nearly a decade in golf operations. Andrew began his career in golf immediately after graduating from Florida State University's PGM program, joining Oak Hill Country Club in Rochester, New York, as a PGA assistant golf professional. He transitioned into the Director of Retail role in 2021 at Oak Hill, where he led the shop through 3 standout years of growth and innovation. During his tenure, Oak Hill earned multiple AGM Platinum Awards, including a 2024 Best of the Best Top 10 recognition, highlighting it as one of the top shops in the world. In 2024, Andrew took over as Vice President of Peter Millar Licensing at Imperial, where he leads efforts to grow the accessories licensing partnership between the two brands. Drawing on his on-course retail experience, he brings a clear understanding of what resonates at the shop level and focuses on building meaningful, results-driven relationships across golf retail. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited to have you for this conversation.
Thank you, Justine. And thank you for that great intro. That was very positive. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I know I touched a little bit on your background and your career in golf thus far, but can you walk us a bit more in depth through your career path in golf? How did you get started, and what eventually led you to your current role?
Like a lot of people, golf was a hobby. I started playing in high school in Virginia growing up. I was on the high school team for 3 years, and that really got the golf bug going. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I moved down to Florida my senior year of high school to get in-state tuition for Florida State so that I could be part of that fantastic PGM program. Through there, I got my PGA Class A certification and membership. And during my time at Florida State, I did internships at Pinehurst, Wannamoisett, and Oak Hill. After a wonderful experience at Oak Hill, I was invited back, which I was very excited about as a PGA assistant golf professional. So I was there for 3 years, and during that time, I helped with the merchandising, among other, cross-functional trainings that we do as part of that job. And I really felt drawn to the retail space, the member interactions, the FaceTime that you get with everybody. I just thought it was fantastic, not to mention the apparel and the brands that I was drawn to. So I realized that my strengths in golf were not necessarily teaching or playing, but more on the retail specialty side. And after a few more years, I did take that director of retail role when it opened up, and I was offered by Jason Ballard, which was a fantastic opportunity. So I really focused my time on developing my retail skills, sales management of both inventory and people. And then from there, it's been a natural transition from the buy side to the sales side of the industry here.
Mhm. I love that. I love how you zeroed in on your interest in the retail side. And I think that's so important, especially the folks who have the opportunity to work at a club where they are exposed to all the facets and get that time in the shop, get some time on the teaching tee. And I love seeing where everyone finds their niche, whether it's retail or not. It might be something else, but I think that's a great thing about being at a really robust club and golf operation where you can try a little bit of everything.
Definitely. When we're going through the training process for whether it's on the sales side or the buyer side, we try to be as cross-functional as possible. Make sure that you are hitting as many different skill sets as you can, because you don't really know what you're good at until you get your hand in it. And for me, that
Or
retail experience was extremely beneficial because I realized that was really where my passion lies.
Amazing. That's terrific. So, during your tenure at Oak Hill, the golf shop earned multiple prestigious accolades. And as I mentioned, it was a top 10 best of the best shop just about a year and a half ago in 2024. What strategies and initiatives do you believe were really key in achieving that level of excellence in your shop at that time?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first thing I have to say is that we had, and I'm very biased, and I realize that everybody else would think the same thing, but we had an unbelievable team. I think probably the best team in golf. not just from a retail standpoint, but the golf professionals that we had were all very cross-functional, to go back to that term. We had great teachers. Everybody was good at giving lessons, good at running tournaments, very adept in the shop, and very communicative with the membership. So the engagement with our membership core was phenomenal. We didn't have any weak links in the chain fence, for lack of a better term. So with that, we were constantly innovating. I think that's the number one thing that is important in top shops. Constant innovation, whether it's visual merchandising. We had one example is I wanted to sell more head covers, and we brainstormed an idea to work with one of our caddies who had a local woodworking shop. And he actually built us this huge head cover display that was wooden, and we painted it to match the shop displays, and it just was phenomenal. And after we started displaying head covers in this custom display as opposed to on the ground or in alongside apparel, year over year head cover sales went up 83%. So we saw huge returns in that regard. So a little innovation from a visual merchandising standpoint, and then also products to keep with that same reference. That same caddy with the woodworking used some of the wood that came down during the renovation to the course that Andrew Green did prior to the 2023 PGA Championship, and we turned those into a variety of wooden products like cutting boards and cheese boards and all these different items that you won't find at any other golf shop, but they are symbolic of what we try to do at Oak Hill in the innovation. I'll just highlight some other things as well. We try to make sure that the training initiatives for staff are very well rounded. We did Oak Hill University seminars that were set up by Jason Bella, the head golf professional. He brought in host pros at other clubs to teach us about various topics, whether it was merchandising or personal fishing, club fitting. Again, getting a well-rounded professional is integral to that process. Member guest engagement, we've talked a lot about and continues to be a priority at clubs. And then just, I think maybe the most important thing is a meticulous attention to detail. No matter what it is you're trying to do it very well and make sure that you understand everything about your process and your goals. So all of these contributed to that annual revenue growth, which is another quantitative measure that shops can point to when they're looking for these awards.
I love it. What an amazing group of examples. I particularly love how you talked about the woodworking, and I think anything shops can really do to lean into their local community, whether that's a local artisan or I don't know, a type of food someone's famous for or a sports team in your area. I think that just is so special and you can't replicate it. And using the wood that came down during a renovation, that is just so incredible. And I'm sure your members were so excited to have the opportunity to own a piece of that and really part of the history and the heritage. And I think that totally speaks to facilities should absolutely lean into that in retail however they can, even if it's a little outside of the box of what they might
Yeah,
think.
you're completely right. The members and even a lot of the guests that are from the Rochester area that know Oak Hill and love the facility. It's a landmark of Rochester, to be honest. They were very intrigued and loved the idea of those particular products. And you mentioned sports teams too. We were
Mm,
lucky enough to do some work with the Buffalo Bills. We were co-branding some apparel there for a long time, and I believe they still are. But those kind of partnerships just really, if you can dig into that local community, you'll find that there's a lot of sentiment from your members and your guests that is enjoyed.
definitely. Couldn't agree more. So, transitioning from the club level retail operations to a leadership role in licensing at Imperial is a significant shift. How has your hands-on experience in golf shop management and at a green grass retailer influenced your approach to overseeing licensing and partnerships and brand development in your new role?
Yeah, it was probably the biggest shock, right? Moving over
Really?
from being a buyer to now selling to buyers and
Mhm.
working with sales reps and managing a different kind of inventory and production. I would say it's been a huge learning curve and one that I have still to undergo. I have a lot to learn every day. There's some new problem to solve and a new solution to find. And I find that very engaging. I think no matter what role that you're moving into, whether it's crossing industries or within the same industry, a different role, there's something that you have to learn to really fulfill your role and make sure that you're continuing to grow. For me, that's been different production methods, distribution channels, supply chain logistics, managing reactions to changing economic conditions. Things that at a buyer level maybe don't impact you as much as
Mm.
when you're producing a product and trying to move that product into shops and making sure that you're meeting the needs of the customer. So there's been a huge learning curve there. I'd say my background in green grass specialty retail gave me a great understanding of kind of the wants and needs of buyers, as well as the importance of branding. So apparel companies have brands like Imperial and Peter Millar. Private clubs also have important brands. So we have to understand as vendors, we have to be cognizant and very hypersensitive to clubs' branding standards, the individual club as well as the membership needs of that club. Oak Hill is very different from Pinehurst, which is very different
Mhm.
from your local municipal club. So there's a lot of different needs that go on there. I have a good understanding of seasonal retail buying, which you have to have when you're dealing
Mhm.
with different clubs in different areas, from the northern clubs to the southern clubs, as well as relationship equity, which I find interesting. Need both parties have needs that need to be met and feedback needs to be given. So there needs to be clear communication between the vendor and the club for it to be a very successful partnership. And I think whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side, it is important that there's that clear communication happening.
Definitely. I think you're the first individual we've had on the podcast that's gone from green grass retail as a buyer, then to the brand side. We've had a couple folks who were on a brand product development side and then ended up in green grass retail. So always glad to get that perspective. And I think it's something folks in the industry think about. It's a natural thing that someone might consider, especially if they're a buyer and they have a great experience with a brand or have a relationship with them, that they might consider something on the other side of the table for themselves.
There's hundreds of different career paths within the golf industry. And I think that for me, especially, I grew up thinking that I was going to be a head golf professional. And then I realized that my skill set aligned more in the retail space. And
Or
then that transitioned obviously into where I currently am. I would say that people looking to move on to new roles or figure out what their career paths are going to be, just identify what your skill set is and improve on that as much as you can with constant education on topics and go back to cross-functional skill sets. Just make sure that you're getting continuing education as many
Mm.
spaces as you can.
Yes, yes, continuing education so important. And you
Mhm.
mentioned your Oak Hill University, I think you said it was called. Anything like that, I think people have access to, whether it's in their facility or in their PGA section or in their community. By all means, I think taking advantage of it because you never know, it might spark your interest in something as well.
Definitely.
And member experience is really at the heart of private club retail. Were there any programs or maybe traditions or small touches that you found particularly effective in making your members really feel seen and valued and excited to shop with you at Oak Hill?
Yeah, we did a number of things. I was known for an off the beaten path approach to member engagement. There were a number of people that I had very good relationships with that I would just do a locker drop surprise. This particular member, I knew they were big Peter Millar fans. If we got a new drop in that I thought they would enjoy, I would go ahead and put a shirt in their locker. And they knew that this was not something that they had to take, but if they enjoyed it, they could take it. And they liked the idea of being the
Mhm.
first one to see it, the first one to potentially get that opportunity. And they knew that if they didn't want it, they could bring it back to my desk and say, yeah, that's
Right.
not really my style.
Sure.
But it was, I think, a personal touch can go beyond just saying hello, Mr. Smith, when you walk in the golf shop. There's a lot of things that you can do beyond that, and really thinking about how you can address each individual in terms of what their needs and wants are. We did things like birthday discounts, which I think is not uncommon, but it gives a touch to that member that, oh, I do feel special today because it's my birthday. I can go in. They're going to shower me with happy birthdays when I walk in property, and I get a little discount in the shop, which is fantastic. It all comes down to building and maintaining relationships, and each one is just slightly different. We would often reach out to members with preferences to let them know when we got new drops of product in. Sometimes we would intentionally open boxes on the counter instead of down in our supply area. That way, when members walked in, they would see this new product coming out, and it was a oh, we just got you at the right time
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little touches
Uh-huh.
that can be made to make the members feel welcome and really differentiating depending on the individual.
I like that opening the box where the members can see. It's a little sneaky. They think they're getting a first look, but certainly could be a conversation starter if they said, "Oh, what's that you got there?" and want to take a
You're exactly right. Yeah,
look.
I would probably once or twice a week we would do that, and it was a nice touch, especially during downtime when maybe there wasn't a lot going on the shop, and it would spark
Right.
conversations. And we got to know a lot of members and their
Mm-hmm.
preferences that way.
Love it. And really no downside or no risk with the locker drops either. As simple as they can bring it back and it's really no expense at your part by any means.
No, that was just a fun touch that I used to do with only a handful of members that I had good
Sure.
relationships with that understood that was just a fun way to interact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now that you're on the other side of the table, on the brand side, and have seen both parts of the business, what do you think makes for a truly successful club and vendor relationship long term?
Think the most important thing is an understanding of mutual needs, right? Each party in any relationship needs to have clear communication on what their needs are. So, from a vendor standpoint, we need to understand what the club's brand and DNA is. What is it that this club's about? What are they trying to promote? What is their brand, right? And from there, we can identify their seasonal needs and clearly communicate about what we can offer and how we can provide value. And then we really provide that meticulous attention to detail on what it is that they need and seeing that through to the very end. From a club standpoint, I think it's important that clubs understand production needs and clear communication on providing accurate inventory needs from a production capacity standpoint. I'm learning a lot about that right now. Understanding lead times and all the
Sure.
things that go along with production and management of new inventories. And then really investing in staff training on products is something that we did well at Oak Hill, right? If a customer comes into a shop and has a question about a product, it benefits not only the club, but also the vendor for those staff members to understand not only how to sell the product, but what the qualities of that product are that differentiate it from other brands, how that can affect the purchasing power of
Mhm,
that
mhm.
product. And then I think most importantly, just honest feedback and clear communication between both is important, no matter what the relationship is. I think that's very important.
Definitely. That's all so important. And from your vantage point at Imperial, what are some of the biggest shifts you're seeing in the golf retail industry in 2025? I've been having more of these conversations with our buyers, so interested to get your perspective from the other side of the table, whether it's a trend of products, branding, or how clubs are working with their vendor partners. What shifts are you seeing or looking out on the horizon and perhaps seeing coming towards us?
Yeah, I think we could do an entire podcast on this single topic, but I'm
Or
really just going to point to one thing, and it's not even from the sales side, it's going back to the buying side. And it's been happening for a few years now. I think that there's a significant shift in how retail buying is affecting clubs and vendors in a positive way. We're seeing more direct interaction between brands and clubs than we ever had before. B2B sites like RepSpark obviously have taken off, and it's creating an environment that exposes buyers to more brands and a diversity of products than ever before. So not only are we
Sure.
seeing information dissemination increasing from the vendor to the buyer because they can see instant inventory and full offering of availabilities, but
Right.
we're also seeing an increased expectation on buyers
Mm,
because of this deeper, more unique assortment. And there's similar increased pressure on vendors to create new, exciting ways to display clubs' brands and new
right.
products. So,
Right.
on both sides of the industry, I think because brands like or B2Bs like RepSpark are making it easier to buy,
Mhm.
it's also making it more difficult to encapsulate the entirety of what's being offered in the market.
Sure.
So I would say that the biggest shift right now is retail buying, but also
Mm,
you can point to a lot of other things. Sustainability in products is
mhm.
not negotiable anymore. It's
Sure.
required and further on, but that's probably, I think, the biggest shift currently.
Mhm. Are you seeing anything around logos and that ultra customization is certainly a trending thing? Are you seeing more logos, clubs doing specialty logos for a tournament or for different various groups? Are you seeing a cleaning up of logo guidelines? That's a conversation we're starting to hear from our buyers too.
Yeah, I would say both actually. So we're seeing a huge increase in multiple logos for the same club, right? So it used
Mhm.
to be you had
Right.
one club logo and that was what went on everything. And now
Right.
there's variations of logos, there's vintage logos.
Mhm.
There even for let's look at the 2025 US Open. That logo is something that was used in prior iterations of the tournament and brought back to in a modern way, but it still has a vintage look to it. So I think that a lot of clubs around the world are really doing this in order to scale their merchandising operation, create this brand that they can expose in more ways. From a vendor aspect, we're trying to make sure that we can encapsulate all of these logos and adhere to the guidelines because each logo
Mhm.
does have a guideline. So yes, there is definitely an ultra customization
Mhm.
aspect that we're trending towards and finding ways to represent brands of different clubs in multiple ways.
Yes, we're seeing some of our members doing centennial logos or anniversary logos for their clubs, which again, it's just
Mhm.
another opportunity to get their members to buy something if it's a special logo or a limited time logo, all those sorts of things.
You mean member logos too? Were huge at Oak
Yes,
Hill.
yeah,
We had our traditional wreath logo that went on 99% of what we did. And the
right.
member logo was introduced early on in Jason's tenure. And it was a very important aspect of the club by the time I left. Members took great pride in it. And I think that we're seeing that similar shift in internally at clubs across the world and the nation, creating these logos that are member only because it creates a sense of pride within the membership.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Definitely seeing that grow on our end as well.
Mhm.
So, as you reflect on your own professional growth, were there any mentors, key decisions, or habits that you feel really impacted your development into a retail leader?
I'm glad you asked because I think mentorship is one of the most important things that we have in this industry. We have such a great network of people that creating long-lasting relationships is key to not only professional development of yourself, but of those that follow you. And
Mhm.
I enjoy that a lot. Jason Ballard, who I've mentioned a few times thus far, is the number one mentor in my professional growth so far. He's the PGA head professional at Oak Hill Country Club, has been there for probably, I think it's been a decade now, Jason. So if you're listening, it's been a while. He was the 2020 PGA Merchandiser of the Year for a private category in retail. So he's got a ton of expertise in the retail merchandising environment, and that's where I garnered a lot of my expertise as well. He gave me a lot of leeway as well to make my own mistakes and do everything that I needed to for the shop. So I really learned a lot during the 4 years that I was there. Some of the things that I learned from him and continue to learn, he has a relentless detail orientation and nothing is too small mindset. So that's where focusing on the small details really gets us further because we're able to follow everything through to the finest point. Staff first leadership, individual staff development is probably the primary thing that he is always thinking of. And now that I have a team that I manage, it's probably my finest point as well. I try to make sure that the people that I'm developing are being cross-functionally trained with different skill sets while also looking at what their specialties want to be further down the road. Also, he had this proactive playbook where solutions to problems that haven't happened yet are being developed. And I think that is an interesting way of looking at things. If you can
Uh-huh.
solve problems that haven't necessarily happened yet, you're way ahead of the curve.
Wow, that's
And
impressive.
yeah, trust me, it's very impressive. And I'm nowhere near the level that he was able to attain, but it's certainly something that has stuck with me and I continue to
Mhm.
try to be better at. As
Okay.
far as key decisions in my career, I think I point to during COVID, I left the Rochester area to be closer to family. So I took an assistant role at Kinloch Golf Club in Virginia in 2020. And that was where I really learned how to manage a multi-million dollar retail operation. This is prior to my director of retail role at Oak Hill. That was my first time really managing any retail operation. And it just so happened that the next year, after I had 12 months under my belt of that, Jason called me and offered me the director of retail role, which I think I accepted on the spot. Um, and then after 4 years of specialty retail, I was looking for a new challenge and opportunity, and
Sure.
Jason helped me find something outside of the green grass. So it was really a very collaborative experience the entire way, which is great.
I love it. I love that story of going somewhere else and then returning back to Oak Hill. I think those things have a way of working out. It seems in golf that everyone ends up where they're meant to be. And I've seen it time and time again, someone leaving somewhere, getting some experience somewhere else, and then the time comes and they come back to where they had previous been as an assistant or something like that in a bigger role, which is always cool.
Yeah, I didn't grow up in Rochester, but I do consider it my home, given the
Aw.
time there and the team. It was just absolutely fantastic. It was the best opportunity that I think I've ever had, and I'm glad that I took advantage of it.
Amazing, amazing. So, any for professionals who are perhaps aspiring to try being on the other side of the table. Maybe they are a golf shop manager or an assistant buyer or somewhere in that sphere, and maybe they're interested in moving beyond the floor, whether that's on the brand side as a inventory planner or product development or something like that. What advice might you give them from your experience?
I would say the first thing to do is obsess over the member experience first as a buyer, and
Mm,
then worry about margins and revenue second. That's what we always tried to do at Oak Hill was make sure that the experience is absolutely top notch, best in
right.
the nation, best in the world, really, and then sales will come secondary
Mm,
as a result of that. And it worked every year. The member experience really drives the sales and not the other way around. And I think that's the important thing for buyers to really take away. If you take away nothing else from this chat, think about that the
mm,
member experience drives the sales and not the other way around. Make attention to detail your personal brand. I can't stress enough how much or how important it is to build trust with both your members and your vendors by knowing every little detail and making sure that it's as perfect as it can be every time. This creates trust with your members and your guests, your customers, and as well as your vendors, and it works both ways. Get fluent with the numbers, know you're open to buy inside and out. I think buyers that don't understand what their OTB is and how much they can buy and what their inventory levels need to be to get to a certain sales number aren't setting themselves up for as much success as they possibly could have. And then lastly, I would say invest in your network and your mentors,
mm.
ask for advice, and also be a mentor for young professionals. So I'm starting to get to a point in my career, I'll bite short, but starting to get to a point in my career now where I can start being a mentor to aspiring professionals and people coming up as well. So it's a cool full cycle to see.
Definitely. It is cool to see the young folks who are just coming out of college, who are maybe interns and they're just getting started. It's really exciting to see their excitement for the business, for golf, and keep fostering. We want folks to keep coming and working in our world. So that's always exciting to see that they're excited
Definitely.
about being in golf.
I remember being there, and most days I still am there, but the excitement of not knowing what's going to come next
Sure,
maybe dwindles over time. But I
sure.
think it's great to be in that
Yeah.
position.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Andrew. I think that about wraps up our questions for today. It was so terrific to learn a little bit more about your journey and being at Oak Hill and now on the other side of the table doing Peter Millar licensing with Imperial. So thank you so much for sharing everything with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Justine. And just a quick shameless plug, if I can. Hopefully, you don't cut this out.
Of
If
course.
anyone listening out there needs Peter Millar accessories, belts, or t-shirts, contact your local Peter Millar rep, and we will definitely make sure we get you what you need. That's all I
Absolutely.
got.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Andrew. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Justine.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of the Fairway to Retail Success. And we'll see you again soon. Take care, everyone.